Hey, it's Nick with B&H, and right now we are shooting what you will have just seen that was all done on the brand new Sony A1 Mark II, which is Sony's brand new flagship mirrorless camera and is aimed at those who are working in the highest end photography, videography, and commercial work. So what we're going to be doing in this video is kind of giving you a behind the scenes of what it was like to work with this camera on our sort of faux commercial shoot, as well as some of the specific features on this camera that allowed us to get the shots that you saw. But we're also going to be taking it to do some portrait photography to put it through its paces in that sort of category, as well as a little bit of wildlife photography, kind of try to show you as many usage cases as possible. Now, the reason we decided to do a commercial style shoot with the A1 Mark II is because the original A1 was and still is an absolute workhorse of a camera when it comes to high-end professional commercial photography and videography. And the A1 Mark II brings over a lot of those same specs and features that made that camera so popular with those usage cases. So for instance, you're getting the same 50.1 megapixel sensor, you're getting the same ability to record 8K video at up to 30 frames per second, and you're getting the same 30 frames per second burst rate in photography. That is all unchanged from the original A1. What the Mark II does is primarily bring over a lot of the more recent features that Sony has introduced in their other cameras to their A1 flagship lineup. So this means you're getting things like much improved IBIS compared to the original A1, you're getting pre-capture in photography, you're getting human pose estimation, and you're getting more advanced subject tracking modes than you were in the original A1. So it really rounds out the feature set. Like I said, we got a lot to walk through with this camera, but we're going to start with that commercial shoot we did, and we're going to go from there. So for our fun little fake commercial shoot, we shot the majority of the video in 24 frames per second at 8K resolution. And just like with the original A1, it looks fantastic. You are getting so much resolving ability when you can punch in on an 8K image and still get full 4K resolution. And just like the original A1, it's 10-bit 422 internal, oversampled from 8.6K, and that looks great. Now, the other thing that we shot a lot of it in was 120 frames per second at 4K, and this is borderline no compromise. The only real issue is a 10% crop, which to our eyes was not very noticeable when we were actually composing the shots. Now you do get some updates over the A1 as well. You now have LUT input support, you have timecode support as well, but one of the biggest updates to this camera over the original A1 was in its stabilization. So one thing we knew we had to test with this camera was its in-body image stabilization, because it's been upgraded from 5.5 stops in the original A1 to 8.5 stops in the Mark II. And as you will have already seen by this point, having seen our little faux commercial, we got some really impressive results with this so far. We even had our DP just handheld running alongside our subject, and the results kind of speak for themselves. You are able to get shockingly stable images out of this. Now we had a semi-wide angle lens on it at that time, but it still looked really good. Also, one last shout out I have to give about the image stabilization. For that commercial shoot, we did bring a gimbal and we did anticipate using it for some specific shots, but we ended up not even taking it out of the box. So literally everything you saw in any of those clips was done either handheld with those 8.5 stops of image stabilization or on a tripod. So we were very, very impressed with the image stabilization. So now we obviously have to talk about photo specs with the A1 Mark II as well. It is just as capable of a photography camera as it is video, and we've had quite a few opportunities already to put it through some of its paces. We've done some wildlife photography in Central Park, we've done some burst rates during our commercial shoot, and now we're here in a studio space doing some portraiture. And in terms of its photo specs, it carries over a lot from the A1. It's the same 50.1 megapixel sensor, same 30 frames per second maximum burst rate. That much is unchanged. But this does inherit some tricks that have come from Sony's more recent flagship cameras like the A9 III. For instance, you now have, dedicated to the C5 custom button up front, a speed boost mode. And what this lets you do is you can select one drive mode on your camera, say 10 frames per second. And then you can hit the C5 button to immediately go to 30 frames per second. So this is really great when you don't want to miss a specific moment, but you don't want to max out your buffer just holding on this button and shooting as many frames per second as possible. And a really other cool update that kind of goes hand in hand with this is pre-capture, which is also coming over from the A9 III. So with that, you have the ability to start taking pictures as soon as you have pressed the shutter button, from 0.3 seconds to 1 second before you actually fully press the shutter button. So for wildlife photography, this is huge. That can be the difference between making the shot or not making it. But so now, as you'd expect from a Sony flagship mirrorless camera, autofocus performance has been great so far. You're getting 759 phase detection autofocus points, But kind of in keeping in line with this whole theme of catching the A1 up to where Sony's more recent flagship cameras have been, this also inherits a lot of more recent improvements like human pose estimation. Now, if you missed the boat on this, what this does, it essentially allows the camera to anticipate where a human subject is going to land in the frame when they pose, and focus on their eye accordingly. So what this means in practice is autofocus is even more reliable. And this also goes sort of hand in hand with their AI subject recognition modes that have also been in their more recent cameras. So this allows the camera to instantly recognize a human in the frame versus an insect versus an animal, bird, planes, trains, automobiles. But the one thing the A1 Mark II does that's technically brand new is even within the same shot, it can recognize all these subjects. So what this means in practice is if you're starting with looking for a human, and then you move over in your frame and there's a dog, it will dynamically switch to the subject recognition and understand that it's now looking at a dog. And you don't need to do anything in your settings to do this, you can have it happen automatically. So once again, as with most Sony cameras, they just make it very, very difficult to miss focus on this guy. Also, while I'm here, I should mention that along with the A1 Mark II, Sony did come out with a brand new 28 to 70mm f2G master lens, and we shot a decent chunk of our commercial shoot yesterday on this lens, as well as pretty much all of our portraiture today. But there's a whole separate video that we're gonna do on that to kind of talk about that lens in more detail. So go ahead and click the link, I don't know, somewhere in this right here, and you can watch that video if you wanna know more about the lens. But going to the camera body itself, what's interesting about this camera is that it is the A1 Mark II, but the camera body itself is exactly the same as the A9 III. The only difference I could see is that it says A1 II here. Otherwise, it's the same as the A9 III, and this is really good because that camera had excellent ergonomics, and that translates to the A1 Mark II. This means you're getting high resolution EVF, it's 9.44 million dots, and the refresh rate, you can now hit 120 hertz refresh rate on this at a higher resolution. And you're also getting the 4-axis LCD screen. This is the screen that makes everyone happy. If you just want it to tilt, you've got that. If you need to go out, you've got that too. You can have your cake and eat it too with this. No notes, love this guy. And then also you're getting all of your I/O options that you would need on the side. And I love what Sony does here. I wish every camera manufacturer did this. The doors open and they're nice and stiff, so there's none of that flappy nonsense you get with some of these other cameras. And you have everything you would need. You got full-size HDMI, USB-C, PC sync port, Ethernet, multi-connector port as well. And just like all of Sony's other flagship cameras, it accepts SD cards as well as CF Express Type A cards, takes standard Sony batteries for the previous A1 took, so all of those will still work here. All of which is to say that when you factor in what you're getting with this camera, the resolution, the burst rates, all of this put together, the ergonomics of this camera are very good. It's amazing how much power you can get in such a portable package. It's very hand-holdable, very easy to shoot with. So overall, in our hands-on time with the A1 Mark II, it's performed predictably excellently, and after playing with the A1, this is unsurprising. This really is a camera where a dedicated photographer or a dedicated videographer could absolutely get their money's worth out of it, but as a hybrid camera, it really adds a lot of value, because on the photography side, for instance, if you really, really need the maximum burst rates possible, the A9 III is there with that global shutter, 120 frames per second. It is very difficult to argue with that. And then if you need pure resolution, the A7R5 is going to be what you want to go with. But what the A1 Mark II does is really kind of give you the best of both worlds with that. You're still able to hit 30 frames per second with those 50 megapixel images. You're still able to record 8K, 30 frames per second, 4K 120. That's nothing to sneeze at when it comes to specs on either of those sides. So the A1 Mark II, if you are a professional commercial videographer, photographer, or some sort of hybrid, this is really going to be a great all-rounder option. Pairs really nicely with the new 28 to 70mm lens, and it's going to be a lot of people's go-tos, I think, going forward. But obviously, this is YouTube, and I'm sure you have some hot takes, so let us know in the comments below what you think of the A1 Mark II, what you would use it for, and until next time, I'm Nick with B&H. Stay creative.
Introducing the new Payboot credit card. You can save the tax, or choose special financing for your purchases made on your Payboot credit card. It's easy. The new Payboot card, same funny name, your choice of exclusive benefits. Apply today.